7 women married the same man. 1 killed herself and left a note banning him from her funeral. 1 was accused of poisoning him, held under house arrest for years. No trial, no charge, no explanation. The others lived lives most people never heard about, quietly, carefully, in the shadow of one of the most controversial political figures Africa has ever produced. His name is Jacob Zuma, President of South Africa from 2009 to 2018, because behind every headline about corruption trials, rape charges, and state capture, there were women, real women, with their own stories, their own sacrifices, and in at least one case, their own breaking point. We start with the one who broke. Her name was Kate Mantsho. She was 44 years old, a mother of 5, a freedom fighter who never held a gun. And she left 4 words behind that South Africa will never forget. 24 years of hell. To find out more, let's dive into Empire Elegance. Before she was a wife, and before she left a suicide note and held a state funeral and political scandal, Kate Mantsho was someone remarkable. She was born on September 2nd, 1956, in Alexandra, north of Johannesburg. Her family relocated to Mozambique when she was a teenager, and she built her entire early life there. She earned a diploma in languages in Maputo and became fluent in almost all of South Africa's official languages, as well as French, German, Portuguese, and Kiswahili. This was not a woman who drifted through life. This was someone who understood that in a world shaped by apartheid and underground politics, knowledge was armor, language was a tool, and she collected both. She was recruited by Mozambique's national airline, Linhas Aéreas de Moçambique, known as LAM, and served as the airline's deputy station manager for nearly 20 years, from 1976 to 1993. But the job was never just about aviation. Kate Mantsho, as described by African National Congress comrades at her burial, was a quiet comrade and unknown soldier, someone without whose contributions several ANC operations would not have been possible. At her funeral, former President Thabo Mbeki said her contribution to the fight against apartheid was an inspiration. He described her as someone who served the struggle without seeking the spotlight. Nelson Mandela was also present. Nelson Mandela attended her funeral. 2 former presidents spoke at her graveside. This was not a woman who lived in the background. She had a story, a full, brave, extraordinary story. And yet most people only know her name because of how she died and because of the man she was married to. Shortly after joining the airline in 1976, Kate met Jacob Zuma while he was in exile in Mozambique, overseeing intelligence operations for the ANC. They married that same year. She was 20 years old. He was already married. At the time of her marriage to Jacob Zuma, he was already wed to his first wife, Gertrude Sizakala Khumalo. Zuma's polygamy was not a secret. It was simply a condition of the life she was entering in a foreign country, in the middle of a liberation war. Over the next 2 decades, Kate had 5 children with Jacob Zuma, Zolizi, twins Duduzane and Duduzile, Fumzile, and Vusi. She gave him more children than any of his other wives. But the household was never just hers. By 1980, when Kate had their first child, Zuma had already fathered a child through an extramarital affair with another woman. That pattern would not stop. Other wives were added. Other children were born outside of marriage. By the time Kate died in December 2000, Zuma was simultaneously married to at least 2 other women and had fathered children with several more. As his political star rose, the world around Kate became more crowded, more public, and more painful. The woman who had sheltered his comrades, learned 5 languages to serve his movement, borne him 5 children, and spent 2 decades in the shadows of his career. She was one of many. Jacob Zuma was out of town, an overnight business trip. That morning, Kate called Reverend Frank Chicane, who was then Director General in the presidency, and told him she had taken sleeping pills and anti-malaria pills. She told him he would find her dead when he arrived. Then she hung up. Chicane rushed to Oliver Tambo House. the deputy president's official residence in Pretoria. When he arrived, Kate was still alive, but barely. She was conscious enough to give instructions. She told her son Duduzane to go to the walk-in closet and retrieve an envelope. She asked him to give it to Chikon. It was her suicide note. Then she was rushed to Melmed Hospital. She was declared dead on arrival. Duduzane was 16 years old. He later described the moment. She didn't pass away, she didn't die, she committed suicide. It was late morning. One of the staff members came running frantically. When I got into the room and looked to the right, Mom was laying on the bed. She was non-responsive, frothing at the mouth. And then there was the note. Duduzane had it in his hands, his mother's final words. And then Chikon reached for it. In Duduzane's own words, "I remember he took the note. We almost had a little arm wrestle match for the note. The last time I saw that note was when he took it from my hands." A 16-year-old boy. His mother's last letter. Taken from his hands in a hallway while her body was still warm. There is something about this story tells you everything about how power operates around grief. The full contents of Kate Mantsho's suicide note were never officially released, but significant portions became public through a court inquest docket, obtained legally by a journalist in 2006, 6 years after her death. The note described their marriage as 24 years of hell. It contained strict, precise instructions about who was permitted to attend her funeral. Strictly my dear children, my maternal family to attend. From the Zumas, only brother Mike, and all the Mzobi family. Our marriage has been 24 years of hell. Jacob Zuma, the deputy president of South Africa, was forbidden from burying his own wife. She did not ask for sympathy. She did not write a long farewell. She wrote a boundary. When the note became public in 2006, it caused an immediate political storm. A loud faction of Zuma's supporters moved to frame the publication as a political attack. The newspaper that published it was condemned, despite having obtained the document entirely through legal channels from a public court record. Zuma was once again portrayed as the victim. The woman who had written those words had spent 24 years in a marriage she called hell, and still found the strength to give specific instructions about her own funeral. She became a footnote in someone else's political story. She deserved far better than that. When Kate Mantsho died, her 5 children ranged in age from 7 to 20. The twins Duduzane and Duduzile were 16. Phumzile was 11. Msolisi, the eldest, was 20. Old enough to carry the weight of it, young enough to be altered by it forever. And Vusi, the youngest, was just 8 years old. He had barely known his mother before she was gone. Each of them dealt with the loss differently. Duduzile later founded a foundation focused on helping people at high risk of suicide, turning her trauma into purpose, trying to make sure other families did not go through what hers did. That is not a small thing. That is grief transformed into service. Kate Mantsho Zuma was given a state funeral, attended by former presidents Nelson Mandela and Thabo Mbeki. She was buried in the Heroes Acre section of West Park Cemetery in Johannesburg, among freedom fighters, because that is exactly what she was. The country honored her in death in ways it had completely failed to honor her in life. She helped a liberation movement from a foreign country, with no weapons and no recognition. She raised 5 children inside that movement, across 3 countries, largely on her own. She endured a marriage she called hell for 24 years, and her reward was a state funeral where the man she had explicitly excluded from her burial likely stood at the graveside anyway, because power does not always respect last wishes. What Kate Mantsho's story forces us to ask is a question. What does it really cost a woman to stand beside a powerful man? Not the official version, not the photograph on the red carpet version. The real cost, the daily, private, accumulating cost, measured in years and in silence, and in children raised mostly alone, and in a note written from a closet when there is simply nothing left to say out loud. This story is about how the 7 wives of South Africa's president really lived. Because the official story of Jacob Zuma never had much room for these women, they were mentioned in passing, counted, photographed, and then moved aside. Kate Mantsho refused to be moved aside. Even in her final act, she was specific. She was deliberate. She named the people who mattered. She excluded the one who didn't. She told her truth in 4 words and trusted that those words would survive her. They did. 24 years of hell. South Africa heard her. We are still hearing her. And her name deserves to be known for far more than this. This is the story about how the 7 wives of South Africa's president really lived. In our next video, we will turn to another woman in the Zuma household, one who is still alive. She was accused of attempting to poison Jacob Zuma with tea. She was investigated by police. She was placed under a form of house arrest that lasted for years. Restricted, monitored, cut off from her normal life. No trial, no charge, no conviction, no public explanation of what was ever proven or why it ended. Just years of a woman's life, quietly taken by the full machinery of the state, with no accountability and almost no coverage. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to Empire Elegance and hit the notification bell for more powerful stories about the lives and legacies of the world's most influential families. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.